Hey, it is your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We are going to look at and dive in a little bit more in depth into covert negative validation, covert narcissist, and how they will withdraw their attention, their expression, their communication, their validation, their presence from people in people's lives in order to manipulate them. A covert narcissist oftentimes doesn't seem like a very self-centered or selfish type of individual. In other words, you would not think that this person would inadvertently want to harm or think negatively or be neglectful of others. They seem to be an upstanding citizen, hold a great job, have a good income, seemingly, responsible and accountable in very specific, however, sometimes very isolated areas. And this behavior trait of being accountable, responsible, and sort of very functional in this area of their life, it oftentimes does not translate into personal relationships. You might even call it antisocial, meaning, for the individual, but not for the benefit of the group. And to the point where really it begins to hurt, exploit, and take advantage of others. But oftentimes it's done through a deficit, which meaning a withdrawal or a lack of presence, a lack of attention, a lack of communication, a lack of physical expression, nonverbal expression, etc. The whole gamut. It can really vary, per person, but it is really the withdrawal that it is in the assessment and in the mind that, this person is not worth it to me. It's the old, it's not worth the time of day. It's not worth my time. It's not worth my attention. There is an assessment going on in the mind of a narcissist that always opts into the favor of their needs and also to the deficit of others. So whether it's a conscious, subconscious, unconscious, in their awareness or out of their awareness, it just is. You have to look at the behaviors to really understand what is going on underneath. Again, it's the old, tip of the iceberg sort of situation. You might see the tip of the iceberg, in a lake, but there's a whole lot going on underneath the surface that you don't see that is propping it up or is giving it, what you see. So you have to really go from your experience. And covert invalidation or negative validation can take many forms. And I get a lot of people say, well, what are some examples? Some examples might be just in the natural relationship experiences. For example, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, where you would expect attention, affection, a phone call, a gift, a card, a communication regarding that. Oftentimes you'll see a deficit or a falling out, a bottoming out from the covert narcissist. And it's not that they're, I'm not good at celebrating things. This can oftentimes ripple out into many other areas of their relation, of their life and how they relate to people. They can be very much loners. They can be very aloof. But they can also be very disdainful, which means it's not that they're just retreating or they're introverts where they like to read a lot or retreat a lot or be very reserved or retiring in their nature, in their physical nature or their personality type. Because there are a lot of people who are more introverted, which means they prefer and need to spend a lot of time alone, independently and in quiet and in solitude and in that solace in order to kind of be happy. It's just where they naturally gravitate to. And then there's extroverted people who are very outgoing, very gregarious, very social, very sociable, affable, so you have that kind of going on the spectrum. But really it becomes an issue when this individual might be the the loner, retiring, retreating, but yet, be very neglectful of their responsibilities or their accountabilities to others. In other words, they might not be very showing of attention, eye contact, celebration or acknowledgement, acknowledging you for a job well done, validating you, giving you guidance and direction where you might be needing it. So it might be very apparent, your needs, but they don't really go there. They don't give the time, the energy, the discussion, the review, the research to really be present for people in a lot of those ways. So it can become very hurtful and very exploitative, where it's almost manipulative, where they just won't give a hand where a hand is needed. They will be very much like the bystander who's just watching something, take place, and they will not feel it's their place or responsibility to really be there, and to validate this person. It's because, they will sort of, assess in their mind, well, this person is not worth it. This person needs to pick themselves up. I had to do this for me, or I don't feel good enough. I don't feel it's my place. They'll make a lot of excuses. I'm not a very, loud person, or I'm really, I'm not good at talking to people about things. They might give a lot of these excuses where, to, be expressing for their shortcomings. And oftentimes, because of a lack of empathy, because they don't really kind of understand, or they don't have the emotional intelligence to get people's needs, that they just kind of fall out. It's very much a shortcoming, but people might then begin to interpret this in a negative way. The negative self-assessment. I'm not worth the attention of this very important, significant person. So if you've gotten into that thought pattern, that habit of thinking, that habit of feeling, and that habit of self-assessment, realize that it has nothing to do with you. Your needs are so valid, so important, and need expression, and you need to air them out. You need to get the basically get them out, communicate them, become in touch with them yourself, and really begin to be in a position where you're able to validate yourself in these ways that a covert narcissist was not able to. And of course, don't put overly idealized or an over amount of responsibility, or an overabundance of significance to this person for what they did or didn't give you, because it is what it is. Their limitations are their limitations. You basically need to accept that, understand it, and then let them go. You can't. It's an exercise of futility to try to have a discussion with them. You didn't. You should have. Would have, should have, could have, because you're going to waste a lot of time, energy, and you're not always going to get the closure, the admittance from this person, which, you're almost, hanging your hook on to say, well, I would feel better if this and this were to take place. Well, that day might never come. So why wait and stall your life and your permission to feel good and move on in your life, while trying to wait for this person to get there, because chances are they might never get there. So you could go your whole life with just having a big hunk taken out of you, and feeling like, you won't be able to move forward in your life until you receive this, this from this person. And oftentimes people have like a survivor's guilt, like, they're almost moving through the stages of grief, and, they're like, okay, now that I've processed this, now I feel guilty for surviving this, and I furthermore can't even give myself the permission to move on. So if you're in that, try to identify this and remove the guilt that you have from living your own life, because oftentimes people are so dedicated, so habituated to trying to please this person and overproject goodness onto this person, and almost love enough for two people that they end up, overextending themselves in their life, and they furthermore do not receive or welcome into their life the positive people who could love them at their best, or at their next level, their healed level. So you need to identify, what is a vision for my healed level? What does my healed self look like? What does it feel like? What does it act like? What does it do? And begin to really identify with that healed vision of yourself, and not the wounded position. It's very much like I say, it's like an alcoholic who overly identifies with themselves being an alcoholic, and they don't ever see themselves as a person, alcohol free, and kind of put that in a positive light. They keep it part of their disease. Yes, you have to realize that, you have, a chemical imbalance that predisposes you maybe to, getting sucked into this alcoholism and becoming, you're not able to control it. sort of begin to realize that, you have a positive chemistry that is your healed self, and begin to identify with that positive image, and that is me, and then give yourself the opportunity to breathe there and live there, walk, sleep, and eat there in the healed place, rather than getting hovered back into the wounded self that oftentimes is perpetuated even by thinking about this person. It's triggered by seeing pictures of this person. The subconscious mind, that's how it works. It's triggered back. It is triggered back, and it is primed back by that old memory. So you need to kind of look at your past with new eyes, and your healed self, get into the shoes of your healed self and look back and say, okay, now I have myself. I have myself in those situations. I am whole in those situations. I just couldn't see it for what it was back then, but I can see it now. Now that I've had enough experience, time, and tools, and learning, and raised consciousness in my life now, that I can look back and go, okay, I've got you moving forward. That person is what they were, and really begin to unhabituate yourself, or use the eraser in the mind to kind of erase a lot of that negativity, becoming embracing of your positive self now, and allow yourself protection and boundaries from getting primed and triggered by the old self, the old blueprint, the old you, how you felt and how you were treated. That's why they say no contact, but furthermore, you can really begin to anesthetize, protect, and illuminate yourself moving forward, from those those erroneous messages and the ways that you were treated and overly identified with a covert narcissist abuser, who it's a very abuse in a very sort of subtle but very profound way. It's peace and harmony with you here today. I hope that these videos, that they do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.